I've written 2 homilies to be preached this Sunday. Don't worry, I'm not going to preach both of them this morning. You'll just get one. In the first homily, I talk about 2 topics that sometimes cause questions to arise about Jesus and the teaching of his church. The first topic is what Catholics believe about communion, and some of the differences between what other Christians believe about communion. The second topic is the question that sometimes arises of who should be admitted to communion, and sometimes there's the proposal that everyone should be able to come up to communion, regardless of sin or denomination. Now, I'll give you the quick, short answer to all those questions that arise and to the teaching of the Catholic Church on communion and its practices with communion. The short answer is this: Jesus. What Jesus actually said and what Jesus actually did. That's the first homily. If you're interested in those sort of topics and those questions, we have that recorded and it'll be posted on St. Cecilia's website. But the second homily that I prepared is a little bit more kid-friendly. So I need 5 volunteers from the first communicants, 5 volunteers who want to come up and help me act out the gospel today. Okay, we'll go 1 right here, 2, the one waving his hand, 3, 4, and 5 right there. Okay, I'm going to have you 2 kind of stand over there. Just stand over there. You guys come over here. Okay, go over there a little bit farther. Okay, you 2 start over here. Okay, all right. So we start with 2 disciples. And they're walking along, and they're talking, and suddenly, Jesus comes up and walks with them. And Jesus comes up and walks with them, and he listens to them talking a little bit, and he says, well, what are you talking about? And one of the disciples says, oh my, are you the only visitor to Jerusalem that does not know of the things that happen there? And Jesus says, what things? And so they go on to explain how Jesus was crucified, and that there's now reports that maybe he's alive. And Jesus looks at them and says, oh, how foolish, how slow to believe you are everything that God said in the Bible. And then he goes on to explain to them everything that the scriptures refer to him as they walk along. And they get to the place where the 2 disciples are staying. And Jesus acts like he's going to go on farther, but they beg him. They beg Jesus. How do you beg? Beg Jesus, please, stay with us. And Jesus decides to stay with them. And it happens that while Jesus was staying with them, he took bread in his hands. Pretend you have bread. Blessed the bread, broke it, and gave it to them. And with that, they were able to finally recognize Jesus. And before, they had not been able to. Now, Jesus had disguised himself the first part of the way walking with them. And then finally he revealed himself when he took bread, blessed it, broke it, and gave it to them. Now this disguise of Jesus, kids, we're going to figure out a little bit more of how Jesus disguises himself and how we can recognize him. So we're going to take Jesus and we're going to pretend here a little bit. So Jesus, he says, "This is a kangaroo." And there's a disciple of Jesus. This disciple here, he hears Jesus say, "This is a kangaroo." And he looks, he figures, let's try to figure this out with my 5 senses. We're going to go through my 5 senses to figure this out. And he looks at her, and he tries to, his first sense is sight. And so he looks and he says, "Is this a kangaroo?" "No, not a kangaroo." And then to the second sense, touch. So he touches her. Does she feel like a kangaroo? No, she doesn't feel like a kangaroo. The next sense, smell. So he smells her. You want to smell her? Okay. If he did smell her, would she smell like a kangaroo? No. The next sense, taste. I don't suppose you want to taste her either, no? If you were to taste her, would she taste like a kangaroo? No. And then we get to the last sense. And the last sense is a little bit different. The sense of hearing. Now, he heard Jesus say, "This is a kangaroo." Now, Jesus is God. Does God ever tell a lie? No. God never lies. So this disciple, when he hears the words of the Son of God, Jesus, he knows it can't be a lie. So he believes this is a kangaroo. All right, let's give a round of applause for all of our first teams. Now, kids, we're going to hear Jesus say some words, and he's going to disguise himself. He's going to say some words with bread. He's going to say, "This is my body." And he's going to say some words with wine, and he's going to say, "This is my blood." We have 5 senses, but there's going to be 4 senses that trick us, that we don't believe. The first sense, it's going to look like bread and wine. The second sense, it's going to, if you touch it, it's going to feel like bread and wine. The third sense, if you smell it, it's going to smell like bread and wine. The fourth sense, if you taste it, it's going to taste like bread and wine. But we don't believe any of those senses. The sense we believe is what we hear. Why? Because Jesus says it. And Jesus is God, and God does not lie. My brothers and sisters, we can learn from something from these kids who are going to receive First Communion. They all are excited to receive Jesus.